Hello and welcome back to NCSY Pulse. My name is John Ackerman, and I am very excited to have a new guest with us this week, Arieh Bentolila from Florida, from Southern Florida, right, Arieh?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, from Southern Florida, somebody who I became friends with, I think it was at that managers conference a few months ago, and we got to know each other a little bit more through the LEAD program, and someone who's quickly become a very good friend of mine. Arieh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction, John. Really.
Arieh, it's great to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in NCSY, this great career. Where did it all begin?
So long story short, I was born and raised in Panama, and I grew up always with an urge. I believe, again, this sense of urgency is something that every Yid has. I mean, the question is how fortunate we are, to connect with this sense of urgency. But I always wanted somehow to change the world and put a little bit of my input in all the things in general. I'm saying for the future of Klal Israel. And long story short, I lived in Panama. I graduated from high school. From a Jewish day school. It used to be the only Jewish day school in Panama. Nowadays there's more schools, but again, it was the only option back then. And I graduated from high school, and I lived in Israel for about 5 years. And in between, I lived in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, for almost a year. And then after that, I moved back to Israel. I met my wife, and then after that, we lived in Israel for a little bit. Then we came back to Panama, and I started working as a youth director in Panama. And that's
Sure.
when I would say, and it's a highlight in my career, actually, and I'm sure you'll love to hear this, John.
Yeah.
But actually, I just felt a little bit like I want to grow in my career. Like for real, this is the point where I want to fulfill my dream of actually being able to influence Am Israel, Klal Israel as a whole. And I really want to seek my career. I didn't see that I was going to grow more, at least as a professional in Panama, for sure. As I do consider myself a Torah, as a Torah, I was going to grow in Panama, but not in my career. So that's when I once was invited in NCSY in a Shabbaton, and then I saw that Shabbaton and I was shocked. It was an Atlantic Seaboard Shabbaton in 2015. I was really shocked. That was actually when I lived in New York for that short period of time. And I just logged into ncsy.org. By the way, I had no clue that this was something that you were able to do. Again, I'm not joking. I just logged into the website. I saw be part of the family, those clinks we're hiring. And I just, filled my information that I want to work in NCSY. I did tell my wife, don't worry, I don't think we're going to move to America. Nobody will ever hire me. And again, I think I was right. A weird guy from Panama, you need to do all the visa and, all those forms and all that lawyers, how to get into work in America and legal and all that. Nobody will hire me, so don't worry. But I applied just to see what happens. And then that's when it started. I just started getting interviews by almost every regional director in NCSY back then. Almost everyone got me to an interview. And it was an awesome experience, I would say.
So, Arieh, you got your start, you went on a Shabbaton, you came into the organization. Like you said, you just sort of figured, hey, why not? I see the website, let's give it a shot. And boom, here you are. You started off in Central East NCSY, and now you are living the dream in Florida, obviously. So good weather all year round, which is a little bit different than Detroit. So tell us about how did you get started in Detroit, and what was it that brought you to Florida?
Sure. So I met amazing people on all these interviews. I was interviewed by many regional directors, great people. Just to get an interview from these people that they give their soul and they pour their love to Klal Israel and our future, the future of Am Israel, which is the teens, the youth in America. I was just amazed. I was sure, I want to work here. But on the other hand, I'm not going to lie, I was extremely scared. When I say scared, it's not because of my English. I'm sure that everyone is noting my accent. I mean it. I was afraid. I was I'm not going to move to America. On one hand, I was sure, let's go, let's jump. But on the other side, I was and again, this is something I discussed with my family. We just had a child, my firstborn, he was born 2021 actually, but we were actually saying, I'm not sure if I want to move to America. Like, again, how I'm not used to that. We're not used living, not close to the family.
Sure.
My parents are in Panama, and although my wife's family, they are in Mexico. But anyway, it's kind of the same, the communities, if for people who know both places. But again, I was worried, and suddenly I met Rabbi Tali Friedman, and there
Sure.
was something different about Ratali, and he's like, you have to come to Detroit. Like, you have to come just to see, like, as a visit. Like, I'm gonna have you, like, just come. And I was like, well, it's hard, we have a son, Yeshua, he's 2 months old. How are we gonna travel with him? It's a schlep. And then I remembered, and I even told Tali, like, look, we can't do it. Like, thank you so much. We can't even go to visit you. And I was shocked that he was shocked, as if we have been, knowing each other from a long time ago. He was like, no, you have to come. You don't get it. You need to come. Like, I actually have like 3 available positions as chapter director. And again, like, you have to come just to see, whatever, don't worry. And I told him, I'm sorry, I can't. My son doesn't have a visa. And that's, again, like, to enter the country as a tourist. And he was like, there has to be a way, where your parents live, where your in-laws live. And that's when an idea came, like, oh, we actually can drop off our son, Yeshua, 2 months old, in Mexico. Again, this is the first time that we do this. It's not like he's 3. And we dropped him by my in-laws, and we took the flight from Mexico to Detroit. And it was the summer. I think Tali did that on purpose. It was June. And we saw the community, and we were shocked in a good way. We were very shocked. And I would say that Central East was love at first sight. I'm not joking. It was really love at first sight. Just looking at the region, and again, it was really love at first sight.
So you come into NCSY, and I know Rabbi a long time, and he's as good as they get. Amazing director, Central East. His team is fantastic. Menachem Tannenbaum's a very good friend of mine. So what would you say, you're just telling me the story, how you were blown away, love at first sight. So I want you to take a step back. And let's say there's somebody else coming who's saying, I'm interested in working at NCSY. Maybe this is a place for me. And that person comes in and we say, who you should speak to? You should speak to Arieh Bentolila, because he is the man. He's the guy that you want to talk to about coming into NCSY from a different perspective. A lot of times people, they'll come to NCSY and they were an NCSYer in high school, or maybe they were an advisor when they were in college, and they've come along the way. They know all the terms. They know what a JSU is from a TJJ, from an everything. They know all the lingo, right? But coming to NCSY, where you begin as a city director, and that's your first sort of entry point into the organization, is a very different experience. So if somebody were to come to you and say, Arieh, John said that you're the guy, you're the one to talk to about starting a career at NCSY, what would you tell that person?
I mean, well, first of all, and this is something I will do even before telling that person something, I will actually try to see, and actually I'm amazed, but this is something I learned from Tali, right? I'm not sure if he will like that I have been mentioning him so far a lot, but again, I will actually ask that person, I will want to see what's his agenda, like why he's thinking about joining NCSY. Like, I mean, I believe there's 2 types of people. There are people that they love working in these beautiful outreach organizations, the Kiruv world, and trying to get more of our dear brothers and sisters closer to their Judaism. But there are people who do that because they like doing that, or they have, good connections, and they are very, like, easy people to relate and approachable. But there are other people who they take that a step. There are people who take that into the next level, which is like, I actually want to pour my heart and soul into that. So, of course, I mean, depending what the person wants, I will actually try as much as I can to encourage that person, like, definitely. I mean, it also depends where in NCSY the person will join. But again, I mean, where in a good way, it depends where the person is from. Like, someone who was born and raised in America, I think people are very used to, like, moving from place to place. So I would say that's an advantage, which is something that a guy like me, like South Americans, like, we barely move. Like, you were born in Panama and that's it. You're there forever
That's
and
where you
ever.
stay.
And that's usually what happens. It's the same in Mexico and the same in Brazil and Argentina, like a lot of people that I know from these countries. Although, again, I do think I will tell them that it's an awesome place to work. I mean, in terms of all the family, it's very much like a family. Like, I mean, let's take StaffCon as an example. It's a huge event. There's a lot of people in the staff conference, in the national conference. And years go by. The first year I went, I barely know people. Okay, fine, whatever. But then the second year, I'm amazed to see people that remember my name, but in a good way. Like you feel connected. And that itself, it's something that it doesn't have a price.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, listen, one of the beauties of working in NCSY is that, people often say like about their work is that, oh, it's not just work, it's my family. It's not just my coworkers or my family. Sometimes people mean that, sometimes they mean it in a good way. Sometimes they can mean it in not as good of a way, just like my family, we fight all the time. But in NCSY, right? But in NCSY, I think usually people mean it in a good way. Many times when we have people on the show, they will have been alumni of NCSY who did NCSY when they were in high school or college. And they like to talk about, this person made a big impact on me when I was in high school. This person made a big impact on me when I was an advisor. You talked about how you came to StaffCon and even though you didn't know a lot of people, you were immediately made to feel welcome, like it's a family. Who are some of the people who made an impact on you when you first started to work here that made you feel like it was a family?
I feel very, very lucky that I started working as a Central East chapter director. I'm gonna say why. I'm not sure if it's the only region, but if it's not the only, it's fine. But it's one of the only regions that you can travel by car the same day and you can visit every chapter. Like you take your car, let's say Detroit, and you go from Detroit to Cincinnati 4 hours, and then I'm not doing it in order, so please don't excuse my geography. You go to Columbus, then you go to Cincinnati, and then you go up to Cleveland, and then you go to Pittsburgh, and that's the whole region, right? I'm saying it's just amazing. By car in one day, you just visited the whole region. But let's forget about that logistic advantage. By the way, I worked as a logistics director also. Like I used to arrange all the buses and the transportation and all that. But I'm saying the fact that we were so close to each other, that meant we had a lot of Shabbatonim. So immediately, and I'm going to name them, immediately I became very close with Rabbi T, Rabbi Menachem Tenenbaum. We became very close immediately. Like my wife met his family, and immediately his wife, and immediately we became very close to Rabbi Tali Friedman, with again the amazing tech director Noah Klein, and like we became so close that it used to be like a family, and it really was again, and I really learned a lot from them about how to run these amazing shows that they run. If you're part of NCSY and you ever have an opportunity to visit a Central East Shabbaton, it's really worth it. It's an amazing, amazing show that we have in America. The first time I visited that Shabbaton, I will never forget. But Sally Friedman comes to me and he's like, "Welcome to the best place on earth." And I was like, this is not Disney, but it is the best place on earth. Like
Detroit.
Yeah. I mean, it was not even Detroit, by the way. Not even Detroit. It was Cassopolis, Michigan,
Wow.
which I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what that is. Well, I mean, I only know that the place exists because of Central East, right? But aside from that, I'm sure that nobody has any clue. But this is in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Michigan. Well, I guess it became very well known because of Camp Matziv. But again, aside from that, it's really, I like a Shabbaton, the way it touches the heart of all the NCSYers and all the people who come. It's just something hard to grasp, hard to explain. But I'm so happy and I feel so fortunate that I was able to be part of that family. That again, my point is that it's a very nice way to start in this organization. In a small place, I would actually recommend to anyone entering into NCSY, and now I'm not going to wear the flag of Central East, but I would say any place that it's a small city, like, again, those like Hamish classic small communities that they only have the pizza shop and maybe another meat kosher restaurant and the caterer. So I do recommend that because I think when you start small, that's when you can learn and that's when you can get connected to other people. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Listen, absolutely. And the truth is I grew up in a city not far from there. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Where for us, kind of like living the dream is what you're doing now. You start in Minnesota where it's 30 below zero, and then you make your way to Florida where it's very much not 30 below zero. But let's switch gears because now you switched gears and you had your beginnings in Detroit and in Central East. And now you've made your way down to Florida to Southern NCSY. So tell us a little bit about how your roles changed. You started the conversation saying you were looking to grow. You're clearly a growth-oriented person. I witnessed this and I experienced this both at our managers conference and also when we were together on the lead leadership training conference. Shouts to our friend Dr. Eliezer Jones, who put on a phenomenal program. And so you're a growth guy. You want to constantly be improving and moving up and trying to become better at your craft, to hone your craft. So now we're a few years in. You're in Florida. You've moved up. Tell us about the move and tell us what's exciting about what you're doing right now.
Sure. First of all, I want to start with something, and I always have this line, and I know that a lot of people, they don't believe me when I say this. I'm speaking more from the heart rather than from the facts. Of course, a lot of people knew since I started in Detroit. Even Rabbi Friedman told me at the beginning, we know that one day, that's it. You're not going to be here forever. I always thought, not forever, but I'm going to be here for 5, 6 years, maybe 7. That was out of I was, as I said, love at first sight, and I really loved my family there. On the other hand, we knew that we wanted to be close to family, so again, we were always looking for other opportunities. Specifically, what really attracted our attention here in Miami. I'm not sure if this is gonna be heard by people, but again, I'm just saying.
Oh, people all over the world, tens of thousands of people.
Of course.
Or maybe 10 people. Either way, keep going.
Yeah, whatever. But again, it was very attractive to us. Being closer to family, again, Miami, Florida is closer to South America, and we do have family here, so it was easier. And again, I always looked for growth, so why not? And we took the chance and we moved from Detroit to Florida, and I'm gonna miss the community forever. Again, I'm actually looking forward to visit there. But again, once in Miami, I started working in 2 positions actually. NCSY became, I would say my second job, my job. I will not call it second job, but it's now I have 2 jobs. They do, again, relate a lot, but I started working as Jewish Life Director in a school here. It's a community where a lot of students, I would say the majority of the students, they come from South American families, which again, my Spanish, it does give me a huge advantage connecting with them. I'm not sure if my Spanish or my accent, because these are all things that they were born and raised here. Again, John, you laugh, but they were born and raised here, and this is the type of people, when they talk to their parents, they speak in Spanish, super fluent, and with the proper accent, not as Americans. Not as an American speaking Spanish, right?
Sure.
They not like me speaking in English, right? They speak proper Spanish, but when they have to speak in English, they have a perfect English. And whenever it comes to me, it's just funny. They make fun of my accent. I mean, it used to be the same up in
really. They make fun of your accent because you sound like to me. Your English is amazing. Your Spanish is amazing. So to me, it's wow, Arieh is, the language master here.
Thank you. I'm actually gonna do this very often, John. If you keep speaking about me so highly, I'm gonna ask you to be part of the show again.
It's good. I like to bring up people's self-esteem and their ego. That's what I do.
Thank you. You're doing a very good job. So again, I started working in Florida. I met Rabbi Mark Rose, and again, the region here is very interesting, in a good way. Very, very interesting. I started learning how to work in a big region. And when I say big region, I mean staff, teams. There's actually an awesome statistics here in Florida. I believe is one of the fastest growing Jewish communities in the whole world.
Yeah,
Actually, once I heard something, I'm not sure if it's real. Again, that asked to the experts, maybe ChatGPT, Google, I don't know. But again, I heard once that Surfside is the most dense Jewish community in the world. And after Bnei Brak, that's what I heard. I'm not sure. I do know that whenever you walk in Surfside, you see a Yid for sure. Every meter there's like, so it's awesome, but it's different at the same time. I mean, that being said, it's really different. It's no longer the 6 kosher restaurants. It's like, the big community. People come here to visit. It's growing, and it's like, wow, where should I start? My role specific, going into more my role, I started last year, so this is very recent. I started being in charge of the day school crowd here in Florida, in NCSY, Southern. Something that we were really struggling is actually to involve day school teens in NCSY. We are very successful in the JSU. Not very, I'm saying not like we're not good, it's just something that was very missing, which is the day school space. We started building that, at least putting everything more into the ground, like really bringing it into real life, at least recruiting some teens into summer programs, which I'm personally like super excited. I'm not sure, again, I'm like super, super excited. There are a lot of teens that I know that they are going into TJJ this summer. More teens and people liking this and joining our spirit and our awesome and beautiful community of NCSY. So again, that's something exciting.
You have all these teens, they're coming through your system, right? And clearly you're a good influence. You have a great leadership dynamic, and I know I've heard many, many times that your students really look up to you and they love you, which is phenomenal. But as they go up and as they mature and they graduate, all these kids are going into a very challenging environment now. Most of them, or I should say many of them, will go to Israel. Many of them will not go to Israel. What would you tell, for the kids who are going to Israel? Obviously, they're going to have their own kind of like sets of challenges. But to the kids who are not, who are maybe transitioning to life on a secular college campus, which is tough. You don't have the NCSY infrastructure. You don't have that same family vibe. And obviously, there's the anti-Semitism on campus that's very tough to deal with. If you could give advice to teens who are graduating now and kind of like entering, college life in this environment that's not really easy, what would you tell them?
I will tell them that as much as they can, one of the first things that they need to do as soon as they get settled in college, which is part of something they have to do, they need to find, I would say, 2 things. They need to find close people who they can be friends with, like good friends. Like not always they go with a friend.
Right.
So if that's the case, they need to find very good friends, people that think like them, so they won't feel lonely. And the second thing that I will tell them, they have to be part of something. I'm saying like an organization that brings Jewish pride. That being said, I do think NCSY Alumni is an awesome opportunity. And again, like all these organizations, like once you're in college, you need that. Like you need somebody that you can actually rely and hold to. And I would say that's very, very important. Like I'm saying, now I'm sharing a personal story. This
Sure.
is something I never thought was going to happen to me. And by the way, I'm that kind of guy that when I graduated from high school, I was not the most religious person. I never saw myself being called a rabbi, actually. I never, ever. And suddenly it just happened again. But I said from the beginning, I'm going to go to college, but I'm going to go to Israel. Why? Because there's no anti-Semitism in Israel. So why not? I'm going to go there.
Right.
And to my surprise, a few years fast forward, I'm sitting in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and I'm in the classroom, and suddenly I had a classmate was sitting next to me, and she was openly a Palestinian. Everything was fine. Again, she's a Christian, so everything is supposed to be fine. But one day it started that we brought like desserts in the class, and she had a knife, right? And she was cutting the cake, and she said a stupid joke like, "Oh, a Palestinian with a knife. Everybody runs." And I'm like, and people laugh. Like even Yidden, they laugh at the joke. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like I really told her, like, and by the way, I'm not gonna lie, this was 2015, a year, either 2015 or 2016. But it's the year where a lot of attacks happen in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem specifically.
Right.
But a lot of terrorists, they came out with their knives. And by the way, one of the victims was my very own rabbi in yeshiva. So when she said that in the class, I was like, you're just crazy. Like, you're insane. And not only that, like, she got back to me and she's like, we had like a little bit of an argument, but to make the long story short, she was like, oh, why? Because of the occupation of the Israeli people. But then, even worse, I saw the teacher supporting her, and that's where I said, you know what? No worries.
Wow.
I stayed quiet, again, for my safety and for the safety of others. I didn't want it to get into too much trouble. The year I was almost ending my master's degree. But my point is the following. And sometimes with liberals is when we feel like that's it. Like, they talk about freedom, but that's when you feel like you're not free at all. But I realized that you want to be safe. You need to have friends. You need to have support. You need to have an organization. Back then, I was very lucky. I was in yeshiva at the same time, so I had a lot of support from my Rebbeim and everything. A lot of support even while doing my career. So I was very lucky. But I will tell this to everyone. You need to have support, a mentor. You need to have someone. That mentor, I agree, parents are great mentors, but you also need someone who's not one of your parents.
Right.
I do believe in the parents, don't take me wrong, but I say, like, you need to have both, like your family and, of course, another circle of support, which, again, I repeat it, NCSY, it's a great circle of support as well.
Yeah. No, and you're totally right. It's funny. Not just teens need mentors. Everybody needs mentors. I was just having a conversation with my wife recently, who's a doctor. She's an ER doctor, and she deals with a lot of craziness in the emergency room, as you can imagine. And it's hard because I can't always give good advice. I work at NCSY. What am I going to tell you about, somebody dying or who even knows, God forbid, in the emergency room, right? But I always tell her, you need to have a mentor who also either is or was an ER physician, because they need to understand where you're coming from and they need to be able to give you advice. I think doctors need mentors. I think NCSY educators need mentors. Students need mentors. I think really, really everybody. And so you're totally right. Find friends, find a system, find a mentor. It's like, check. This is definitely the recipe for success. I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. You've been talking about, starting in Panama, going from Panama to Detroit, to Surfside now. And you mentioned that it all sort of started on an NCSY Shabbaton. What was it about that Shabbaton? Was there a conversation? What was it about that Shabbaton that really kind of ignited the spark that told you, yes, NCSY is the place I want to work. This is going to be my next step?
I take advantage just to tell all the people who are hearing this, which is a lot of people, right? I'm saying, I'm saying for real, right? But everyone who's hearing this, I think you should pay attention to this, because we as leaders, as educators, we sometimes think that, how am I gonna make somebody change? And I'm saying, like, we heard the famous phrase that people never remember data, people never remember the facts, people remember how they felt. And I think that's something very real, very, very real. And I'm going to share how. Like, I was invited by a very close friend of mine. I'm going to highlight her, and I hope that she's fine if I mention her name. She's now in Panama, actually, but Leah Bekar. She was a very, very, successful NCSY advisor and later on an NCSY director. She was, and she is awesome. So I hope, Leah, you're hearing this and you hear my highlight.
Me too. We got to get Leah on the show. I'm totally with you. I'm a big fan of her. So that would be...
we have to get her. Actually, we have to get her. Yeah. Okay, so Leah, now you're hearing. It's my fault. I'm sorry. But actually, it was her fault. She invited me. She insisted, like, Arieh, you have to come to Shabbaton. I want you to see that. And I was invited as an advisor. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say a fake advisor. Not fake. Like, I mean, I tried being an advisor, but I was not even an advisor in the region. And this was Spring Regional Shabbaton. And it was my first ever Shabbaton. So I guess, and I'm very thankful, actually. I'm not sure who's the one who put the seal, approved, bring this guy as an advisor. But thank you, Leah, and thank you, Atlantic Seaboard. Back then, I think that Rabbi John Lerner was the regional director back then in Atlantic Seaboard. But again, the thing is that I was invited to the Shabbaton 2015 or 2016. I might be a little bit wrong with the year. I go to Shabbaton. I saw something amazing. Spring Regional Convention, Spring Regional Banquet, the goodbye, the whole ceremony they do to the seniors. Sure. I see these teens. They are crying. They are crying. Like it's over. That's it. I'm saying it's over. My life as an NCS wire, it's over. And I'll never forget seeing the chapter directors. I see them like with the mic, and now we're gonna call for an award of the year, A, B, and C, Leor. I just made that up, the name, right? But they call the team, and the team comes and he's crying. And that's when I said, oh my God, there's two things I have to do in life. It's an option, either or, right? I'm saying like, either I bring this to Panama, like this Ruach, like this type of programming, which I think that nowadays they did a very good job in Panama by bringing that. It was not me. I don't take any credit for that. But I said either I bring that to Panama or I end up joining to NCSY. Again, this was 2015, 2016. 4 years later, little did I know that COVID was going to come to the world. And that's when I said, oh my God, I need a shift in my career. Oh, wait a second, NCSY. And again, it was just unbelievable. But I would say that, I'm saying like, just imagine those teens walking. They had no clue that they were influencing me to become greater, right? Like they had no clue. I'm saying, how in the world a JSU or an NCSYer, right? They will know like, oh, I'm actually putting my, my effort into making up the future of, contributing to the future of Arieh Bentolila. And that's what happened, actually. That's really what happened. I was inspired, and I said, I want to do that. And little did I know, fast forward, I see myself a year ago in the Central East Spring Regional Convention, and I was just shocked. And I had these teens, but they were my teens. I'm saying, like, not my teens. I don't like saying my teens, but they were the teens that I worked with during the whole year. And I'm like, wow. And now fast forward, and I'm here. So it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Wow. Well, I guess you never know, and it's incredible, really, that you kind of came in and I guess got wowed. I've been to many spring regional Shabbatons, and there really is nothing like the award banquet, like sort of the passing of the torch of the regional board leadership to the next year's leadership. Something very special with the magic of spring regional, and I think that anybody who's never been on a spring regional Shabbaton and witnessed that for themselves, you got to see it. There's really, really nothing like it. Arieh, you've been so gracious with your time. I really appreciate it, and certainly with my schedule, I know you and I have tried for weeks to get this episode done. So thank you for helping me finally to make it work. As we wrap up here, it's a hard time in the Jewish world. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of uncertainty. If you had one message to give to your NCSYers, to anybody at NCSY, that comes from the heart, that comes from Arieh Bentolila, that's authentic you, during these very, very tough times, what would that be?
So thank you so much for asking that, by the way, John. This is something I just thought about this yesterday. I'm saying, like, I have always been thinking about this. I just didn't realize it, like, so hard as I did yesterday. As I was walking to shul yesterday at night, I see a lot of police officers, and I'm saying, like, cars and police cars and officers in North Miami Beach, which is where I live, in the neighborhood. And I realized, like, of course, because of the situation, they did increase a lot of the police presence in the neighborhood. But I realized something. Every year, when we walk to shul, Rosh Hashanah, let's say, highest peak, Yom Kippur, or even Passover, right? Doesn't matter, but a holiday. A very well-known Jewish holiday, which we know that it's holidays that usually the shuls, the synagogues, the Beit Knesset, they get full of a lot of Yidden. We see an increase in police officers, in guards. And by the way, we learned something from this, because we see an increase. Usually, who's the people who have a lot of bodyguards or police officers? So only important people, they get to have a lot of bodyguards. Like if you see, I don't know, the US president, he's walking in the street, and he won't be walking alone, for sure not. He has a lot of bodyguards, a lot of security. Important people, again, important people, they have a lot of security. So my message to all the Jewish people around the world, I mean specifically our teens, I'm saying those who know me, my students, my message to you is, we are very important people. Only important people, only important things, they get a lot of security. And I'm saying, just think about this, but a random community in North Miami Beach which is not even, I'm saying, like, I'm sure it's not the most important neighborhood in the whole America. And we get a lot of security because something that is happening 1,000 miles away from us. We are important people. You know, somebody gets hit in the other part of the world, and we need to be secure because we are important. They are guarding people who come to the shul and they pray. That's what they are guarding. They are guarding the Jewish people. We are ambassadors of the whole world, a light among the nations. You are important, and we should never forget that. We should never, ever forget that.
Beautiful. Well, Arieh, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome to have you, and hope you have a great summer, some time to plan and recharge and get things ready for next year. But thanks for joining the show, and hopefully we'll have you back on again soon.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Really.
All right. This has been NCSY Pulse. You can find us online on Instagram at NCSY Pulse, on YouTube at NCSY Pulse, and you can always, as always, listen wherever you find your podcasts.